Love with hands wide open, our poet says. Love with the doors banging on their hinges, the cupboard unlocked, the wind roaring and whimpering in the rooms, rustling the sheets and snapping the blinds that thwack, pew, like rubber bands in an open palm, she writes. But do not clutch and grab and close. Love with them open, hard as it is. Before I begin, I am going to share with you some of my heritage story. That is our worship theme this month, heritage. And some of you might find it triggering or hard to hear if you're in a tender place today or a person of color. Please do what you need to take care of yourself. No one need grit their teeth and bear it if it just is not working for you. So 6 years ago, I took part in an anti-racist workshop for white identified people that asked us all to, as our first homework assignment, begin building an altar for our ancestors. And I know I've shared a bit about that with you before. I put my grandmother's wedding ring on this altar and a beautiful lace handkerchief belonging to my great-grandmother. And I added my great-great-great-grandfather's hand-blown glass paperweight from the glass factory that he and his father before him worked in St. Helens, England. And I also added all of these pictures of the places that my people lived and came from England and Ireland and Italy. And truthfully, when I was building that altar from my ancestors, I found myself feeling such a sense of relief around my family's immigration stories, particularly compared to some of the people who shared in my small cohorts and their families' stories. I felt relief because my family's stories were ones of strife and struggle, and I'm going to expand on that. So the story that has been passed down and told with great pride at nearly every major family reunion of mine or gathering is this. My English and Irish ancestors for generations lived in the poorest regions of England and Ireland, toiling at the bottom of the heap in factories, working on farms mainly not their own, or dying in the coal mines. Many were on the dole, the British government aid for those who couldn't find work or were utterly destitute. These were the untouchables of English and Irish societies. Have any of you ever read the book Angela's Ashes? Yeah, these were many of my people, faces smudged with dirt and coal, living in slums or a cut or two maybe above. They were hungry and oppressed, alcoholic, lived with war trauma among many other traumas, and somehow, against all odds, were able to make their way across the ocean to a land that promised something they had most surely lost or never known: hope. My Italian ancestors were no different. They were poor and desperate mountain people longing for hope, but probably just longing to survive. And when they arrived to these lands, they certainly did so penniless. And as Irish and Italian Americans, they were treated as trash, right? We know this. And refuse. The lowly living in tenement housing and the like. Many of my people were Ellis Island people, names misspelled in ledgers. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these the homeless tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Yeah. Surely those words by Emma Lazarus, right? Inscribed on the Statue of Liberty. Whether my people could read them or not, I'm assuming most of them could not. Meant everything to them. Meant everything to them. And much of this, my heritage story, is absolutely true. There's nothing mythic here. I know this because I spent much of this past summer connecting with my relatives who still live in some of these faraway places and on Ancestry.com, where I got really lucky, for a lot of distant relatives of mine have been at family tree work for a long time, and I discovered pictures and church records and more. This is the heritage story that my family has proudly bequeathed to me, and I hold it dear in my heart. I really do. And I've passed it on to my daughters, and they hold it dear in their hearts. And Tolkien's words from Lord of the Rings have been bouncing around my mind these past few months. Some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend. Legend became myth, and even myth was long forgotten. You see, there's more to my family story than this, and that is what I discovered this summer on good old Ancestry.com. I discovered some of this forgotten more, okay? So there were others who were already on these lands we call America, and many of my immigrant relatives married them, and their lots in life were greatly improved. I would say that their survival was made possible by these matches, and I, and all the privilege I have, including being able to stand here and have my name in gold etched into that wood with a Rev in front of it, is because of these socioeconomic ascensions. I discovered that those who were already here on these lands have lineages that go back to the 1600s in America. They arrived here from England with educations and the status and means to acquire land and to cultivate it and expand it and profit from it. How they came to acquire this land, I don't know yet. But what I do know is that my third great-grandfather, Williamson Mosby, in the year 1850 was living in Missouri, and according to the 1850 U.S. federal slave schedule, owned 4 slaves, ages 51, 18, 12, and 7, whose names and genders are unknown. And he's not the only one. My 6th great-grandfather, John Speed from Virginia, in his 1783 will, writes, "I give to my daughter Lucy one young Negro man named Harry, and my best feather bed and furniture to her and my heirs. Harry, he goes on to write, may be sold as soon as conveniently may be, and the money arising by such sort equally divided amongst my children. These stories were not the ones told in my home, or in my mother's home, or in my grandfather's home. And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. And maybe this is how it happened, these forgotten histories and memories, the great and maybe shameful forgetting in my family. And this is a tough nut to crack, isn't it? What happens when all that we think we know, all that we hold most dear, and you know this is happening at a collective level, it's happening here in our church too, about ourselves and about our heritages. What happens when it all tilts, right? Or the doors become unhinged, like our poet writes. A mighty wind whips through and blows everything that felt like it was in order out of order. What do we do with that? What do we do with that? As heartsick, I was and continue to be heartsick, as all of this made me feel. Maybe this will all sound odd to you, but I also feel today at least relieved. I feel relief at knowing more of the truth, but mainly relief that I will never know the whole of it. Does that make any sense? I feel that relief. That's the wisdom that this work gifted me with, that it's okay to loosening my grips on trying to know with lasting certainty. It feels like a burden, and getting so locked into one story. We know that history, like theology, like science, it can never be ironclad. It's not possible. I know we want it to be, because it helps us feel ordered or battened down against those whipping winds, but this isn't truth. It's not how it works. And it gives us a false sense of security, and I think deep down we feel that acutely. I think we all do. And it's hard. So despite how seemingly comforting it is to think otherwise, we are all working with an incomplete, often distorted and biased database. That's it. And as difficult a truth as this might be to swallow, as hard as it is to live with that palm open, right? To the new, to the maybe, to the I don't know. It also invites us all towards a lovely and desperately needed humility. Desperately needed humility. And I think that's the relief I feel right now. Humility. There can be great comfort and liberation in not knowing everything, my friends. Being uncertain about how things will turn out, or living a life of open-hearted curiosity. It's one of the most rewarding spiritual practices out there. And it's a tough nut to crack too, but it is the spiritual life. Release, loosen, open, widen, wonder, let go. Born and reborn again. Right? The great astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, he calls this the cosmic perspective, which he says, remember, this is an astrophysicist talking. He says, the cosmic perspective is more than what you know. He writes, the cosmic perspective is humble, is spiritual, even redemptive, enables us to grasp in the same thought the large and the small. The cosmic perspective opens our minds to extraordinary ideas, opens our eyes to the universe, enables us to see beyond our circumstances, and embraces our kinship with all life on earth. And he prescribes this: at least once a week, if not once a day, we might each ponder what cosmic truths lie undiscovered before us, perhaps awaiting the arrival of a clever thinker, an ingenious experiment that may one day transform us. And he closes his sweet little book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, with these prophetic words. During our brief stay on planet Earth, we owe ourselves and our descendants the opportunity to explore, embrace, not fear the cosmic perspective. Now, beliefs that help us to make meaning of the world and cosmos, and resilience stories told by those we loved, personal histories that cast our ancestors as heroes or survivors. We, of course, need these. Of course. They help us do hard things. They help us shape our values and morals. They help us feel hopeful and connected. They have helped me feel strong. I can do hard things. And same for my children. Our people did hard things. Treasured beliefs that give shape to our value system, even to our theologies, these are foundations that can help us weather the greatest of storms. There is no doubt. But when we clutch so tightly to them, we become these people, right? Closed-fisted people, but not like in the good way. Yeah. Unintentional fundamentalists, may I dare say, about what we believe the one true story is, period, end, stop. I know that feeling. And when the truth tilts or challenges this, our fear clouds our judgment, and we risk even doubling down, barricading our doors instead of opening them wider. So often unintentionally we find ourselves in that. And we are certainly seeing this play out in our wider world. Reverend Daniel Chesney Cantor says it beautifully. He says, quote, "We spend a lot of time defending our beliefs like sentries trying to defend a castle. Instead of pinning our belief on the absolute truth of something, we might set our hearts upon the journey. We may be surprised by what we discover." And I sense this is what our poet Marge Piercy is asking of us when she says, "Have without holding, love with hands wide open, open palms, loving and letting go again and again, consciously, conscientiously, concretely, constructively, balanced. And I think this is what the cosmic perspective also promises us: balance. Like you, I don't want to pass on myths or redacted, sanitized histories because the complexity of my ancestors' stories frighten me. I don't want this for my daughters or their children. I certainly don't want to teach them to be closed-fisted sentries, defending their castles of belief and barricading doors against the new, or women who must choose between either burying their histories or living a life, this is a big no for me, of perpetual penance and shame over them. Good God, no. I don't want that. Surely there's a third option there between burying history and a life of shame, surely. Surely. And also, like you, my hope is that our descendants, this next generation, might love and know and grow and live with hands just a bit more open than ours or those who came before us. Maybe a lot more, but I'd take a bit. This building's palm is empty and open in a way right now, don't you think? Its blank walls offer a kind of lovely symbol or a reminder to us. There is much work ahead now, my friends, and each of us must, as Unitarian Universalists and people of faith, must commit to it in some way. Maybe your own ancestry work will be a good starting place. Maybe joining the welcoming building team speaks to you. Maybe linking arms with some of the historians in our midst and resurrecting some of this congregation's forgotten history is where you are called. Or maybe you need to, as DeGrasse Tyson prescribes, begin by at least once a week, if not once a day, pondering what cosmic truths lie undiscovered before you. You might begin with a simple prayer for humility and wonder and having without holding too tightly. I hope you will commit to one of these, or maybe something I haven't named, and share with us what that might be. Not so that you are reduced to a caravan of shame and regret, but rather so that you can breathe free, like those words on Lady Liberty's book that she holds. That's the word. Breathe free. Or rather, so that you can keep on singing and humbly hoping. Set your hearts upon the surprising journey and find yourself in true kinship, as Tyson writes, in true kinship with all life on earth. For my friends, you are and you have always been a part of the kinship that is life on earth. We might have just forgotten. Let us remember together. That is my prayer for us all today and in the coming days. May it be so, and amen.